Welcome to episode 2 of the Hatua podcast. With me today I have
Mary Emase, MP Teso South, and a member of the National Assembly.
Welcome, Karibu.
Asante.
Diana Letion, Programs Coordinator for Women Human Rights Defenders Hub, Nairobi.
Karibuni sana to the program. Today we're going to have a conversation in line with the International Women's Day. And I'd like to probably pose a question to you, Honorable Mary. Kenya has strong legal frameworks. From your perspective, where does the implementation fall short?
It is true we are not in short supply of the law or legislation. And where it falls short, from where I see it, I want to believe it is the implementation, it is the coordination, and it is the resourcing. Because despite the so many laws that we have enacted in this country, we still have challenges that persist. Issues around underrepresentation, issues around economic exclusion. You know, when a woman does not get an opportunity, for example, to get employed, you're denying her an opportunity to empower herself and to empower the society. So we have a number of challenges arising from, we've legislated, but we have not sufficiently funded that particular aspect. We have the legislation, but there is poor coordination for implementation or monitoring and evaluation. I want to believe those are some of the reasons why we still fall short.
And do you think the justice institutions are well funded to make sure things like gender-based violence are dealt with effectively?
No. For example, if you look at the Gender Commission for Equality, Gender and Equality, most of those institutions are not properly funded. So because they're not properly funded, for example, if I just give an example of county government where we expect to have safe houses, we expect to have gender desks, you will find some do not even have a safe house. Like my own county, Busia doesn't even have a safe house. We do not have a gender desks in every police station. I remember in my own police station, Adongos police station, I had to call out on issues related to rape and, GBV, and demanded that I be given a gender desk at Adongos police station just last year. It was the end, that's when we got it. So we have a long way to go. We need to give money, allocate funds to follow the functions, so that as we legislate, and in certain cases, we have failed to enact the necessary legislation to operationalize that particular law. Case in point is the two-tiers gender principle, as Article 27, read together with 81B and 177. It has remained elusive for over 15 years. We've not been able to agree as Parliament and enact the legislation that is required to operationalize that law. So as a result, we're still falling short of the gender requirement, of the gender equality, as it may be.
Makes sense. Diana, when you just look at it in terms of devolution and women empowerment and services across all board, how is the decision making done even in the county level? Like the way you serve in Nairobi, Meru, and Kisumu, how does that look like? And you can give us examples.
Let me first jump into what Mahesh was talking about. Yes. And I think maybe just to add on, and especially her very last point, we've done 15 years of the Constitution, but we're not seeing any change. And I think in terms of political will, we are still missing quite significant political will to ensure that some of these things are being implemented. And in terms of funding for institutions, while sometimes funding might be less, I also think that funding is not the only thing, because sometimes we address GBV as a single issue, but GBV is not a single issue. There are so many other factors to consider, even at the community level. We have institutions, yes, like the Gender Commission. The Gender Commission is a wonderful commission, but then at where the Gender Commission sits, there are a lot of other things happening at the community level. So I think that connection between national institutions and even at the community level creates a link that then will ensure yes, we are dealing with GBV, and yes, we have the funds, then eventually we have dealt with the menace that is GBV. In terms of political leadership, I think with devolution, we have increasingly seen women get into positions of representation. It's political positions, but it moves away from political positions. There's still a lot more within the devolution services. So you'd find committees like GBV committees at the county level that have proper representation of women. And perhaps the issue of GBV started as a conversation that touched on women, and that's why then a lot more women were brought onto the table, onto this conversation to speak about GBV. But for me, I think devolution has really improved, and I find devolution very intentional in bringing women into the conversation, and that has been happening.
So what would you say is the disconnect between the law and the reality? Kwa ground.
Two things. I think implementation, as Mhesh says, we have wonderful laws. So all these things are on paper. By the time we get to the implementation bit, that's where there's some bit of disconnect. But then also there's knowledge for me. And knowledge is, we have all these wonderful laws. And Mhesh will tell us all these laws that are there. But then if you ask a Mama Mboga or someone down at the community level, what laws or what do you think supports the work that you do, then that knowledge is missing. So for me, that disconnect between people knowing what really the law provides for them and what is happening in practice. For example, you'll go to a police station and the police will tell you, mambo za watu wawili, we won't interfere. But really, where would you go? It is the police station where you can go for this kind of help. So for me, those two things then create that disconnect.
Makes sense. Honorable. And probably you can even give us examples like in Teso, like what is the reality on the ground?
The reality on the ground is that, first of all, the local mwananchi at the grassroots does not have information. There's that lack of awareness even as to the rights. The women do not know what their rights are because there's need for capacity building in terms of, even legal, knowing that there's legal aid, for example. They have no information. Two, knowing that there is what is called witness protection, that you can actually report your case as a witness, you can confidently accept to go give evidence so that you help that case succeed, that you can be protected. They have no information whatsoever. And the officers, government officers at the police stations that receive these reports or receive these cases have no training, gender training or to how to deal with the gender issues as they are reported or gender-based violence cases. So for me, what I would say is that disconnect. There is need for training, capacity building of the officers handling GBV cases. There's need for, awareness creation. I mean, civic education, basically, so that the local mwananchi understands what are their rights. And I'll give you a case. Because most cases, sometimes you find these cases, the evidence is distorted. I have a case I dealt with again, because I'm very passionate about these gender-based violence issues, because they are so prevalent in Busia County. A girl was raped in her mother's house, because the mother had walked out to a neighbor where there was a funeral. And a man walked into her house and raped the girl, a school-going, a teenager. The girl became pregnant. But on that day when the girl was taken to the police station, she was forced to shower at night before being taken to the hospital to the next day. Then she's taken to a local clinic at the local shopping center. Eventually, when the case got to court, there was no evidence. But God is God, and God is alive. The girl had gotten pregnant. So, I demanded for a DNA. When the child was born, a DNA was done in December. We got the results are positive. So now the case is able to proceed. So they needed to know some of these things, that when this happens, you should not shower. The first stop should be the hospital. They need to be educated on these things.
And there's even the awareness that there are safe houses, there are legal aids that they can actually access within even a police station in the counties.
They have no idea. And right now we have a bill, it is still at its early stages, where we are proposing that government takes the responsibility, provides funding so that we have a safe house in every county. And this safe house should actually have all the services, legal services, psychiatric services. You know, we should have a doctor in there so that when the victim or the survivor is actually taken to this safe house, should be able to get all the services needed. Because more often than not, we tend to focus on the offender or the culprit, whether it's been taken to court, what has happened, was he jailed, is out on bond, but we forget the victim. Whether the victim has gotten the necessary requisite services that will help restore or help the victim to get back to normalcy.
To normalcy.
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense. Diana, do you have anything to...
Maybe just to add, when you're looking at knowledge, there's this excuse that normally we get to hear when you're handling some of these cases, culture and all, mambo za nyumbani you don't share.
Yes.
Because you'd find even perpetrators are known to the victims. They are close family members, their relatives, their neighbors and things like that. And I find the issue of culture a tired excuse. And it's a tired excuse because culture is beautiful. Culture can be beautiful. But then we have sort of made patriarchy the norm. And then we use now patriarchy to enforce culture. So if I was defiled by my uncle and I report to my father and my father says in our community, these things we don't say, or a neighbor and goats are exchanged one way or another and this case is closed, then really the victim has no say. And then we continue enforcing this notion that it is a specific culture that enables these things, yet it is not a culture. So for me is how we have continued to let small things pass through the cracks, and then these things become what defines us as a society.
Mehesh, if I was to ask you, like, how do you think then political parties should become enablers as opposed to gatekeepers to supporting now women leaders to just rise up and get into those political positions? Actually,
I've always said political parties have the solution, have the power to get us out of the stalemate on even operationalization of the two-task gender. Because if they can make reforms in their nomination process and ensure that women have been nominated and given priority in terms of giving them nomination certificates within their strongholds, we are guaranteed of the numbers. Secondly, one of the challenges that women leaders face is the financial barrier. Many cannot afford to finance their campaigns. If parties could provide finance in one way or the other to support, then we would get these women elected, whichever way. And also, they can still support beyond the nomination, beyond the paper. I liked the ODM and even all other parties, even our UDA party, where our party leader will personally even come and campaign for you. Raila would do the same to his candidates, campaign for you and raise your hand and say, this is my candidate, support. So there is that, there's the finance aspect, there is the nomination, and it is possible it can be done and you can get re-elected. And also ensuring that these women, there's a lot of harassment, there's a lot of political violence, also making sure these women leaders have enough security to allow them move around and be able to do their campaigns. That we would have more women leaders seated on the decision-making tables, approving some of these legislations and the laws for us to be able to address some of these vices that persist despite the availability of food.
And I think there's something you said about them providing protection for you guys as you campaign. Because like a conversation we just had previously was about how even during Maandamano, like imagine you've gone for a very positive event, but now you don't even know how to scale walls kwa sababu tear gas inatupa penye huko, and there's no protection for the women, even the women leaders. And I think those are also part of the things they're supposed to also be provided in the constitution, that as long as it's a woman, like you're going to Teso to campaign, you have extra security. You even have those Acha niweke kwa lugha ya mtaa. Wale watu wanakuambia usiende hapo ni kubaya. Because those porters have been put there for your own security, because whoever is doing everything knows it's a woman leader who's vying for MP here and she needs extra protection, and probably that's something they're not giving. So you have to figure out your own security.
You have to figure out and fund your own security higher. Yes.
I get you, Diana?
I once sat in a meeting with ORPP, and they categorically mentioned that the burden of the 2/3 lies with the political parties, and political parties agreed and said for us to ensure that indeed when we get to parliament 2/3 has been achieved, we start at the political party level. That is still not happening, because you still find there's that disparity when you're looking at numbers, and women are the ones who are disadvantaged. The bit about financing, I think one of the things that even at the political level we need to start looking at is the burden of care. And I'm looking at it in two ways. I'm looking at it as a woman who still runs all household duties, but you're also campaigning. I think there was one MP or MCA who was sharing her story, and she was disqualified. Her husband left. Her husband said, there's no way you're going to be out campaigning. You come back at 9 and I am the husband, and me, I'm home at 7. What are you doing outside? So there are certain things that still continue to disadvantage women. Also not looking at the other roles that a woman plays, even as she's getting into the political space, because you will still be called to go to your child's school. You will still be called that people have not eaten supper and you need to provide this. And you will still go out there and people will ask you, you are someone's wife, your husband is allowing you to do all these things. So for me, looking at, you call it right, the gendered look of it, because then you start appreciating that I'm not just coming as a woman politician, but I am carrying a community behind me. I am carrying all these things behind me. And it's the same for male counterparts, because they also get their own different experiences. So I think that we also take that into account. But then for a woman and how the woman carries a community, and that's why people get happy in a county that you're providing all 5 elected leaders are women. You are excited because of what it means for the community. So for me, then that burden of care and what a woman carries and comes with should also be taken into consideration.
And I'm just thinking, jumping into that part for funding for women, looking at it from a point of, I think the man is more at an advantageous point when it comes to even campaigning, because he has a budget and he has even learned he can sell businesses. He can look at a wife who was a teacher who wants to run for office, but all she has is her savings, sauti mzuri, ideas mzuri, but hana kakitu. And that's why I'm wondering, where does the reforms then in the political parties that safeguard that, yes, Madam Mary, who is a teacher, wants to run for MP in Teso, and because we are still trying to work on the 2/3 gender rule, how are we financing her? Because the men can do it, but how are we helping her to make sure sauti tafikia, even the grassroots? Because I think when I listen to you and to even other women in leadership, then I feel like mumepenya. Yani, you guys have fought for your space and your voice, and you're fighting harder than a man financially. Because after a man, you'll go to a chamas and probably try and mobilize some kidogo funds from your women. But a man, say, let your inheritance. Where labda kukumbukwa? Because you're supposed to inherit at your husband's place, and maybe you got hakuna kitu. Like, how should they look at that in terms of reforms, so that now your political party, you've been nominated, how are they funding you to make sure you actually get the seat? Because we are still pushing for the 2/3, and you also have ukona madili. You have things you're actually bringing to the table that make sense, and that's why we need you. Yeah.
Actually, you mentioned on reforms. As we speak, IEBC is preparing for the next elections, that is 2027. Yes. And in the reforms, whereas right now their focus is on the technical aspect of the preparations, that is spatial geomapping, validation of data, voter registration, name it. But they are also proposing a raft of amendments to the electoral laws. And among them, we are recommending that there should be public financing for women aspirants.
Yes.
So that, and that is in the financing, political parties financing, aspect of those amendments. It should be determined, or there should be a ceiling as to how much you can spend. Where is the source of that money? And there should even be an audit afterwards. You should be able to give a report
Of what you did with the
of how the
finances.
money was spent. And we are proposing that there should be public financing for women candidates as a means to help us address the gender disparity, to address the two-thirds gender. Because if we can encourage more women to contest for positions and give them the support that are needed, then there are probabilities that we will increase the numbers. Because if you look at the numbers, yet they have been increasing. But at what rate? We are still below the required two-thirds, not more than two-thirds of the same gender. So it is a concern, because most female aspirants, even if you listen to the elected members of parliament, counties, some will tell you, I had to align myself to Governor A, because Governor A had resources. So I was following him everywhere he goes. And when he gives whatever, he would finance the process, and I would joyride to get to where I got to. Some, it was just by virtue of they were able to secure a nomination of a popular party within their regions. So they went with the wave. But there are very few who will tell you, me, I had resources. So it is a challenge, and it is an issue that should be addressed through the legislation or the amendments in the legislation. Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add a third, and then you task Mahesh once she goes back, is the issue of protection. Yes, you encourage the women. Yes, you facilitate them using the finance specificity, but then also protect them. And it's saying, then you're going out, do we have facilitation for your own protection, for your own safety? And safety here, I'm looking at it both in terms of the physical, but also the mental well-being, because it's a tasking experience, I would want to think. It's something that really takes a toll on you. But then it also, there's something I read recently about governance, and especially when you're looking at Gen Z, and an informed woman does not negotiate for space, she takes it. And I like the approach where you're saying, now you find strategies. Am I going to align myself with this Mahesh who's well known in the community? Is that my strategy? So we also share amongst women, and you start looking at then how do we safely campaign as women, because we learn from each other. And I think that is one of the things that even as female politicians who get into this space, they continue hand-holding a lot of other women to get into the space, because now you're sharing your ideas, your lessons, your do's and don'ts, your thoughts, like, okay, this is what I experienced, I wouldn't want for you to experience this. So that also brings into mentorship, the element of mentorship, and that's continued conversation, so that by the time you get there, there's this African proverb of not like walking alone and working together, then you go far. And I think one of the wins for the women movement is working together, and that has really shown in terms of results. By the time you hold, you sit 2, 3, 5, then you can actually see the results.